Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to meet with me. I really appreciate it. A lot of my time and my internship experience has been about female empowerment and art for social causes, and just like celebrating creativity and art. And I feel like that is a lot of what you do and what you're good at. So I'm grateful to you for meeting with me.
Thank you for offering to do an interview. This is usually it's the other way around for me, so this is a pleasure.
Yeah. So do you mind just telling me a little bit about your background and how Frontrunners came to be and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. I'm a big believer in there being a thread that runs through your life. You're too young yet to know that, but you're already starting your thread. So I think it taps into whatever your core talents are that sort of given to you at birth by the Holy One. And, once you get enough of a span of working and living, you start to see where that thread is going. And for me, my first job at 19 years old was in the governor's press office for the state of North Carolina. And it started that way because a very persistent young woman, me, who really was so shy growing up, I wouldn't even raise my hand in class, had the opportunity to be a Senate page when the then lieutenant governor was running for governor. And I did something he said nobody else had done, no other page had done before. I, on the last day of service, brought him a thank you gift, just a little token from home, right? I don't know if it's a paperweight or something like that. I don't remember. But my mom told me I had to do that. So I took a thank you note and a thank you gift, gave it to his secretary. She gave it to him. And on the floor of the Senate that day, he called me up by name, scared the bejeebies out of me because I thought I had done something wrong. Of course, that's what you would normally think, right?
Right, yeah.
When I got next to him, he put his hand over the mic. He said, I want you to work for me when I run for governor, which is coming up. Have you graduated from high school yet? And I said, yes, sir, I just did. And he said, where are you going to school? I said, well, I'm coming up to Raleigh. He said, perfect. I want you to work for me. And so because he said that, when I did get to Raleigh to go to business school, I bothered his campaign manager so much that that they called me back and found me at my boyfriend's apartment and offered me a position on the staff, the campaign staff. And when he won his election, I went on to become a member of his press staff. And that gelled with me because when I was in high school, I was into journalism and was the editor of our school newspaper. That sounds really small example, but when you start looking at the thread of where things come from, I've always been a writer. From the time I knew I had a soul, which was probably around 15 or 16 years old, when I was writing a poetry booklet for Christmas because I had a lot of money, buy Christmas gifts for had to the journalism space when I was in high school. And without even realizing where I was aiming, that's just where I landed in the governor's staff. I got to travel with him. I got to help write news releases and ultimately towards the end got to write a speech for him. So it went from there into nonprofit work where I worked for international exchange programs, friendship programs that caused me and other people around to travel a little bit, get to know some of the people from the thing. At one point, I was programming their professional appointments when they came through the U.S. Information Agency in Washington. And if they could not speak English, they were assigned, say, a Harvard or Yale professor that would speak their language to translate.
Oh, wow.
And so I would set up their professional appointments in the Research Triangle Park area. And then I could have whoever I wanted, legislators from Johannesburg, and the guy who would be the editor-in-chief of, say, the equivalent of the Wall Street Journal in the United States at my dinner table, a tribal chief from Botswana, his entourage. And so that was where I got the taste for being able to communicate and appreciate and enjoy from other nations and other countries, and spoke different languages, had different cultures and that sort of thing. So from there, it went on to a couple of other political campaigns, and then the Chamber of Commerce, where I landed for about 8 years as an executive director. That's the entrepreneurship piece that came in. And so marrying that entrepreneurship piece with my then media skills and always having to connect people throughout all the positions I had pushed me forward. I ended up writing a book called The Ideal Network, which was basically how you can look your network differently than what most people would look at them. So it's the way that you would utilize that person, not necessarily how they're categorized in occupation. So somebody that might be in PR, I wouldn't use for PR, and my network was enter. So I would, bounce things off of her that had to do more with business proper, not public relations. Mm-hmm. So it's how you use people. So from that book, which was, we had an endorsement from the American Businesswomen Association CEO nationwide, right? I ended up having to do something I never wanted to do, never thought I'd have to do, which is hit the speaking circuit and sell the book. So you have to do that. So that broadened my able to speak publicly and do some things that I make connections at a higher level. Ended up getting a gentleman in the video games industry to make some connections for him in a particular way. He was going to work for a software services firm in Houston, Texas. He had a big carrot in front of him. Turn my company around, says the CEO, and I'll give you $1 million. So he reached out to me, and at that time, Twitter and a lot of the social media platforms were coming along. And he knew I knew how to use them. And so he called me, he said, Mary, I'm going to pay you over the next month to help me turn this around. I need you to start a Twitter account for governance, risk, and compliance, GRC. Never heard of it, didn't know what it was. I had to look it up. But you do what you do, and that expands you and lets you grow. And I was able to bring him in a month after starting the Twitter account, 15 introductions. One of those people brought him 4 more and was the stepping stone for him getting out of that company with the $1 million bonus that was over and moving on. I know. So he introduced me to another games industry person, that he knew. And that person asked me the same thing. And that kind of launched me into what I called then professional networking. So on contract, people would hire me to network for them. And in spaces like the video games industry, where they're more, let's just say, more technically oriented, social skills like networking wasn't really part of their forte. Let's just say the 2 guys and a dog in a basement, going to build the next Angry Birds, right? And it's going to be famous, and that's it. And convincing them that it was a business and that they weren't just building one game, they were building an entire business. And looking at it that way was really a challenge. So I combined some coaching skills that I had developed and learned with being able to make those connections. So I developed a really strong network in that space. And it went from that space to other spaces, heritage tourism and different things where serious games, where people were just starting to learn how to gamify things, that, those people started reaching out to me. And of course, when there wasn't any activity really going on with a Batman or a Spider-Man movie, then all the talent in the games industry was looking for other, connections in television and other forms of media, film and that sort of thing. So I really kind of cut my chops on the video games industry. And it evolved from there into what I'm doing now, which is, I call it business development now, because I took it from just making one connection to another and letting it go, and then finding out later they did business together and I was not in the string of things, to it being more of a formalized business development vehicle, whereby I now have developed a really strong network where I can go tap anybody that's nice and diverse, where I can tap just about anybody to put in front of you. And if it goes to impact, it goes to impact. And by that, I mean, it may or may not have a dollar bill attached to it, but the impact is extreme. Then sometimes it will go to a dollar bill thing. And then I have other flows that can create that dollar bill effect. But I found social enterprise, didn't know it existed about years ago, right about the time I was getting ready to launch what I then called the Introducer magazine. That has now evolved into what we're doing now, Frontrunners League and Frontrunners Innovate. You'll get to that, I think, in a little bit, but basically all under the hat of Frontrunners Development, Inc. So I put my structure together to accommodate what I was already doing. So it wasn't like I launched into Frontrunners Development and said, oh, let me build out all these things. It built me. It found me, it developed me. As soon as I hit social enterprise and knew that there was a mission and money combination business out there, then that happened. So that's kind of where we are today. I'm sort of the president and CEO of it, and then have partnerships with other organizations that help me do what I do, and I help them do what they do.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause so you can
That's
ask.
an interesting way.
You had no idea you were going to get into that much, did you?
Thank you, though. It's an interesting way to think about your path as kind of a thread, even if you're going through things that are not, what you're doing today.
Mm-hmm. It is, because I look back now, I'm doing in the scheme of natural talents. Mm-hmm. I have learned it doesn't have to be one or the other. It's a combination. I think God intends for it to be a combination. With me, it was the media piece. For the shy girl who wouldn't raise her hand, would rather write the answer down at home 1,000 times as punishment than to raise my hand and say it in front of class. Mm-hmm. And that happened in math. Math was not my friend. So then I went on to not doing speaking and from an international standpoint, but I had a stint there for a while because I'm a very creative person. And I found myself on stage a few times with community theater, my own local television show. Found myself in the Wilmington film industry in North Carolina at Screen Gym Studios on stage with the Muppets. Okay. Oh, in a movie with the Muppets. So I know. I've done voiceover work. I've done everything media practically. You can, from, like I say, hosting my own television show to major motion picture where I got paychecks from MGM Studios and standing next to the cast of Dawson's Creek. And, I'm like playing a teacher more or less on the set, and dragging my 12-year-old daughter with her Game Boy at that time onto the set, and her standing in front of Joshua Jackson, and she's just like shaking. I said, Jana, put your hand out. And he shook her hand. She said, I'm never washing this. Like, yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. Or you're not coming home. But, all of that was, strung together, the media bug in me that I always thought I was just a shy kid growing up, and that I got over it. I was what I am now. And it was the shy cover that came over me when I was growing up. For whatever reason, expectations and whatnot from family and friends or whatever maybe made it feel like I needed to be, down here instead of blooming like, I eventually did.
Right.
So the media piece was there, talent also with writing, and the connecting piece. The connecting piece came a little bit later when I realized the powerful impact of connecting one human being with another. And it probably started out with just resources for people looking for this, that, or the other thing. And then it developed into somebody looking for a job that I knew that, would be good for them. And other people might go, yeah, you need to go call so-and-so. Not me. I'd say, let me call so-and-so for you and connect you, and let me send an email, or let me do the heavy lifting on that. And then that's when it really started to connect.
Right. So you said that you started as a Senate page and then worked for the governor's press team, and now as a successful CEO, being a female CEO, do you think that you've experienced any barriers along that path, or like obstacles to success?
Yeah. Absolutely. Obstacle for me because I was so young. And by the way, youth in some circumstances is a black eye, is the same as being a minority somewhere in some ways. And for me, that's what happened when I was very young. I was the youngest member of probably a 3 or 4 person staff, press staff. And I had been working there for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. And I had indicated that the workload was getting kind of heavy. And so I was only doing some administrative stuff. So it must have been 3 of us and an intern, I think, that we inherited from a previous governor's office or something. And what happened there was they hired somebody in, and I was still doing what I was doing. So I learned the lesson of be careful what you ask for, because I was saying that I needed help. What they saw is we need to add on to the team, and we have to another department in the state government to be able to fill that need, and we'll just keep her doing what she did. What I was hoping for is they bump me up and hire somebody to help me didn't happen that way. So ask for what you want. The second thing was when I was overlooked for a raise, and when I went to the boss, he said, "You didn't ask for one. You did
Wow.
not ask for one." And at that point in time, I think it was making a little over $9,000 a year. Yeah. So that was the first time. So those were kind of roadblocks. I kind of learned after that, be careful what you ask for, what you know you don't want. Be very explicit, because it's like my daughter would often say, you have to idiot things. So you can't assume people read your mind or know what your situation is.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of lay it out there, ish sometimes. You have to think of it that way. When I was a little bit later on, and I'm not just going to name names or anything, that situation where you kind of got concerned about maybe someone paying a little, and I had somebody who was literally, his attentions got to the crazy point where I had to tell some of the other staff to be on the lookout for when his car got in the parking lot so I could go hide. I should not have to have done that. Highly visible person he was. He sat on my board of directors. And he was married. I was single at the time, but that was not an invitation. Being a single woman in a leadership position within the community is not an invitation for people to take advantage of you. I was still young, kind of young. So I was probably in my early 30s at that point in time. But that left me in a vulnerable, I think, position a little bit there. And so as it happened, person above him who found out about that took without me having to deal with anything. But there was that. Another hurdle was a race situation where I see color. I never have. But the person I hired decided to use the race card to be able to get ahead of me, to take my job from me. And I had done nothing. I had given her a dress to wear to the Marine Corps ball. I had done all these things to accommodate her. And she goes behind my back and starts stirring up all kinds of mess and calling it a race card. And there were some issues we had to play out in our board of directors. What I learned from that is be careful when you're the boss of finding that line between friendship and trying to be friends with, your employee, and still holding the reins on being a boss. I've always been a friendly person, but I think I've learned over a period of time, because I've had to be the boss in a lot of different situations, is friendly is one thing, but not like best buds where you're, taking people out to dinner all the time, or you're like I did. I gave a dress,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. A problem solver, and I have a good heart. And so I want to do these things for people. But when you're the boss, you kind of have to lightly on the lines that are there, and know what you're doing. So yeah, there have been some. Those are some that I can recall.
Yeah, that's crazy. That story. And when you were saying like being shy when you were young, it made me think about the global poetry projects when they were presenting at Art and Conversation. And I don't remember if it was at DT or Shatali, but they were saying that you don't have to be, the most outgoing person in the room, or you can be completely shy and find other ways to use your voice. Like it's kind of what their outlet, what they were doing. So.
Yeah. We're finding with the Global Poetry Project, because it's, more than just the 3 girls that were there on that particular day, but the ones that have been submitting point, I thought it would be more, generically are artistic. And it really was a dumping of the brain from some of them, their deepest in their heart.
Yeah.
So I think what struck me is one poem that was submitted by a young gal in an African country where opportunity is little to none for girls. And I forgot how she put it, but basically she was saying that the school was more of a chapel, or more of a sanctuary than the chapel was, and that she feared going to school because anybody that would abuse her would find basically solace in the school system, because they would do nothing. They would do nothing, no repercussion for anything that would happen to her. So that's why she was saying that, the school is more of a sanctuary than even a church would be for these people who perpetrate abuses on these young women. So it really sends goosebumps to everyone. You realize how they were using this art form to just be a mental health tool, a healing, or at least just getting it out and their voice out, and having it be heard by people to know what they're suffering through. So yeah, and I think the shy ones, it becomes their outward, expression of themselves, and it gives them a place to, to express themselves artistically that they may not have the voice to stand up and look for that. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So how did the Daughters Global Leadership Mentoring Program start?
This is interesting. I own a media platform called Frontrunners Innovate, and that's where we interview, people from all over the world that are basically solving the world's problems. We say that we connect innovation to impact, and so I do it by business development within a community of people I've interviewed over the last 7 or 8 years. And so these are people who are, problem solvers around the world. And so we've gotten to the point with our media platform where we're seen in 160 different countries around the world in the course of a year, about 80 plus during the course of a month. And we pick new eyeballs and new people from different countries all the time, every time that we post something new, but it's not in the same industry. We cover a broad spectrum of impact spaces, and a lot of them correlate with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And then we dig deeper sometimes into other spaces. So what happened is the work that we've been doing, some of the interviews have been witnessed and viewed by some of the people that have been haunting LinkedIn and Twitter and all these different, places where they have access to picking up the link. And the parents of these girls, individually, not all collectively, not at the same time, started reaching out to me saying, can you help my daughter with this poem? Can you help her get published with this? Can you do this or that with her? And the first one was young Namara, who we met at 13 years old and last year. And her father showed me a YouTube video that she had done on mental wellness. And I was so taken aback by this 13-year-old had so much presence on this video that it just blew me away. I said, I'd love to talk to her. That started the ball rolling. After committing to kind of mentoring her a bit, and it started very informally and casually, but she just picked up on it and she rolled with it. Within 3 months, we had her speaking on virtual platforms right next to about 15 to 20 worldwide diplomats, UN ambassadors and ministers of other countries. I mean, she blew them away. I coached her a little bit on presence. I coached her kind of on, she had a good command of English, and coached her a little bit on that. And she only had 3 minutes to convey her thoughts, and she did it beautifully. Since then, we've had her on 2 or 3 other platforms, and we've allowed her to have a space on Frontrunners Innovate where she's doing her own interviews now and with people. So it's fantastic. Then Shatala came, her father introduced her to us, and she's a little bit older. She's just turned 18 now, and a little bit on the shy side. She has really blossomed since then. We've published her several times. Her poems are fantastic. And then we found out she's also an artist. So her drawings, her doodlings, as she calls them, are starting to come into play. And then I met Aditi through her mother on LinkedIn. And then there's a couple of others, and there's, Casey, who's our intern, we kind of looped into the mix, just because I'm also mentoring with her while she's interning with me. And then we have another one in Nigeria that we work with that was brought on kind of later on, and she's starting into a medical related field in Nigeria. So all these girls literally connected with us through their parents, which I think is fantastic. That's why we call it Daughters Global. Mm-hmm. And we're in pilot right now, coming out at the end of August. And then we'll determine with feedback and that sort of thing how we might go forward. And when I say we, it's me and my business partner in Nigeria, who is the co-founder of the Sub-Saharan Open University there. So that's how it all began, is through parents, which all the parents are very interactive with me. I include them in all emails of what's going on. And so that's the best part of the whole thing. I'm not only helping and working with the child, the parent is right there involved with me too. They've become friends with me too.
Yeah. How do you ideally see it developing in the future?
I don't know if it's going to always live with just me and my business partner heading it up. If it lives beyond the pilot, which is funny because if we set out with a goal and we've put the framework in place and then recruited people, that would be a little bit different than we would have had a plan. It came to us, fell in our lap. So we knew after about the second or third one, wow, there's a need out there. Yeah. So this is not the first time we've done a mentorship program. We've done a pilot with the World Hope Youth Mentors Program right before the pandemic it ended, and we could not regroup after the pandemic for a while. We used members of my Frontrunners League as mentors, and they did a terrific job. Whole different dynamic, the two, but we learned an awful lot with the first one. So I don't know if that's where I'm headed from my business standpoint, is to ride herd on something like that. But if we decided to do it again and broaden it and open the doors a little bit more, it would have a more solid framework, would likely live under the Sub-Saharan Open University Foundation, possibly, and we would involve more mentors to mentor the way that we come to mentor, which is not just having a conversation every now and again and coaching a little bit, which that's part of it. We provide very hands-on opportunities for these girls to practice and get out there with what talent they have, but also to get to know people they might not get a chance to meet in spaces they want to explore. Shatali's interested in film and television. I've had her connected to a voiceover artist in the industry that I knew. And so just to try to kind of school her with that, I've had her connected with a few other people to explore for her. Namara and Aditi will be TEDx speakers. I've gotten them connected with TED speakers. And even one person who sits on a TEDx board that can tell her what they're looking for, tell each one of them what they're looking for. So, we look for where they can explore what their natural interests are. So, so there's a big question mark on that yet, but we do know the impact we've already seen. So part of it is I just don't want to let go of the girls. I love them. Yeah. These girls are mine now. Yeah.
They're definitely so talented. I told Monique after Art and Conversation that Aditi absolutely blew my mind. The way her writing skills, her public speaking skills.
Yeah. She's like polished. She's she'll get that. For that long poem for her to memorize blew my mind.
Oh yeah.
And with such enthusiasm and presence, and you just were right in there with her. She has an engaging smile, and her mom takes her around to pubs and libraries and anywhere where she can perform these things. And so spoken word artistry is actually a real, an art form. I had no idea. So I'm getting ready to try to connect her up with some more of those. I think she mentioned on the Art and Conversation a couple of mentors, because I think Monique asked her. As soon as she mentioned that, before I even got off the platform, I was on LinkedIn looking for those people. I'm like, I am going to find these people that she admires and that have influenced her.
Right. So what is the connection between the Global Poetry Project and the UN?
Well, the whole point of the project, not the point of the project. The point of the project was actually to get the girls to work together to produce it. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of individually mentoring, but also getting people to work in teams, especially across continents. Mm-hmm. And so Namara and Shatali are co-producing this project. So it was my aim to get the two girls together to work on that. Aditi came in the picture. She came on my radar when she submitted a poem, and I talked to her mom about that, and that's how I got to know her. Mm-hmm. So that part of it is to try to kind of get everybody to work together on a major project. The UN comes into play because we have the capacity with all of our connections with UN ambassadors to be able to gift this project. We didn't want it just to do it and have it sit there. We wanted it to have some meaning and bring it forward, because the content of the poems is so rich with what's going on in the girls' minds. Because we did not put a criteria about what they were going to write about. We just said, write what's on your mind, what's in your heart. And some took broader perspectives of what was going on during the COVID, pandemic, and others went very deep and very personal. My mom doesn't have money to put food on the table most days. We go to bed hungry. And, those sorts of things that are going on. we felt like not only do we need to know, we need the world to know, we need the United Nations to know more personally. They know in numbers, and they probably know boots on the ground, the people on the ground know, but do they really hear from the girls themselves? Not the speaker girls that get up to the go to the conferences and stand up on behalf of everybody. That's useful too. But from, I mean, the girls in the furthest corners of Africa that really don't have, or are scared to death to go to school, things like that. So it will be a gift to the United Nations. It was planned to be from the very beginning, and to have that purpose in mind, that motivation to move this forward and get it done. We're pretty much together with it now. It's in layout. And then it will go to, some form of, it'll live in some kind of form, either on Kindle or whatever, where it can be downloaded and be a digital product. But we also want it to be a hard copy if people wanted to order it. That's the piece we're working on now. Shatali's illustrating the whole thing. And we've had Namara's sister, who's very gifted graphically, to do the cover, along with Shatali's mother. Shatali's mother's laying it out for us. So it will go via United Nations ambassador. They will gift it on our behalf to the United Nations. Carry it forward. Yeah.
That's very cool that those girls get to be a part of that.
I know. And we hope to be able to maybe put it in a form where people can, anybody can access it, to get it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the pandemic and kind of staying up and running during it. I imagine having a business that's based off of connecting people. What was it like when the pandemic hit and connection changed?
Well, actually, it ramped up for me. I've been working on my own for a number of years, so it didn't change a whole lot for me. The only thing that did change is at the very, very beginning of the pandemic, we were asked to look for PPE resources, the personal protective equipment, the masks, the gloves, the gowns, all those sorts of things at the very beginning. And I think the people that were asking knew that we had a very diverse and global network. I do, my business partners do. I have a business partnership with Living, Learning, and Working, Inc., which is a global consortium that if I don't have somebody in a particular country, they have a country head probably that I can contact and make work. So we work on business development projects with innovators every day. So the connections for me at the very beginning looked like building a business development team out there who could help source both the ones that need and the ones that have what the ones need. So if it was masks, where can we get it in the most reasonable fashion, and blah, blah, blah. It became, as they called it in the news, like the wild, wild west. The people who were trying to make deals on both sides of the house became gouging and unprofessional and unethical, and it got to be crazy because nobody wanted to do, it's like, you pay me first and then I'll send you stuff. No, you send me this and then I'll, it was no trust. And so what we ended up doing about not long, probably about 6 months in, 6 weeks in, I called my business partner who's working with me on it, and I said, I'm not feeling good about this. Me and God had a little conversation on my walk today, and I'm feeling like we need to pull back from promoting what we're doing and just respond to the business development team that we trust, that we've already built. And if they bring something forward that we can trust, then we can move forward on it. And the funny thing is, we were just in a facilitator mode just because we knew the both sides. We become really good at that. And it's not until really in the last, I'd say 4 months, the things started to gel up on that. We literally, during the first few months when New York was having people die at 700 plus a day, we were working with the mayor of New York City's office on trying to procure ventilators because that was what they were in need of. And while the government was saying they had all they need, we're hearing from, the mayor's office, we don't have all that we need. We're desperate. They were literally crying. I mean, crying. So we had one of our best international business persons to go to bat, and he literally brought bags of money to the doorstep of a Chinese warehouse that had them, and they were holding these things for ransom at the highest bidder basically at that time. Yeah. And 3 times we were up on the queue, the top 3, to be able to make purchases, and those 3 times somebody came ahead of us with more money and just took it all. And so that was the way it went for a little while. And finally, we gave up that, and the fact that the procurement process or the purchase order process with the governments was so slow that they didn't realize, or maybe they couldn't figure out how to change that system quick enough. Because, when you've got somebody who says, I'll sell you these ventilators for blah, 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 this many. And, even if we sourced it elsewhere, which we did, you can't take a week to decide to get those. Somebody's going to come along 15 minutes after you've made that deal and offer a better deal and get them. And that happens so many times that finally we just gave up and said sorry. Until you can fix your purchase order process, it doesn't take a week to go through 10 departments, then this is going to continue happening. So that's unfortunate. But we were able to, in the last few months, to get some oxygen equipment over to India when they were experiencing almost the same thing that New York was. So we're able to call that a win, check mark. We were able to do something like that. So during that period of time, that took precedence. And then I stepped back. My business partner dealt with the PPEs, and I'm doing more of the day-to-day business development sorts of things with the innovators that we have and with the problems that we see that we're trying to work out in Africa, because we do work on our own projects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So were the connection, when you were introducing people and making connections for them before the pandemic, was that mainly virtual to begin with?
Yeah. Yes, it's always been virtual. Zoom primarily, like what we're on now. I developed more of a interest in using WhatsApp, because being global, WhatsApp tends to be what most people use out there in the world. Yeah. It's from the United States, but it's not as popular in the United States as it is everywhere else. And so Africans particularly like to use WhatsApp. So I've learned to get better acquainted with that platform. But as far as for me, with the connections I do, I also do the interviews, and I use Zoom so I can record it, move it up to YouTube, and then take it back down to my website. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the connections were happening all virtual. I don't think I've been able to, the only time I've ever met some of my own league members that I've interviewed was when I went to a conference about 3 years ago in Research Triangle Park and met 3 of the people that I had interviewed there. One of them from India, that she was there. So I got to meet her. That was great.
Yeah. So what is one of your favorite success stories of Frontrunners Innovate?
Oh, there's bunches. If I had to pick one, and this doesn't really have anything to do with business, but it does show community. And that's what I didn't realize until this story came about, that the community I have built, the Frontrunners League, all these people that I've interviewed over the years, that if given an opportunity, they will self-organize and develop their own relationships within the community that makes the whole community an impact organism. Mm-hmm. And that happened this past year when one of our members, one of the early ones I had interviewed out of Zambia, brilliant young lady that was into greening the planet and recycling and that kind of thing. And she was like ahead of her game in that country. A speaker, international speaker, educated in London, but she's Zambian. She went back to Zambia, and that's where she started her nonprofit and her organization and, all this kind of stuff. She has, I think it's lupus, and she fell really seriously ill. I did not know about it, but she belonged to a WhatsApp group that was dedicated to the Frontrunners. My league, I have a Frontrunners League WhatsApp group, and then there's a Frontrunners in Faith group there too. And she met a gal in Norway that was also one of our league members in that group, and they formed some kind of a friendship. Well, the gal in Norway one day was knowing that this other gal in Zambia was having health issues, was worried about her, said that she didn't have a whole lot of food, that, she had all these medications she was having to spend money on, and had kind of gotten to a bad place with her money to be able to buy food. So she had been trying to get a hold of her, to call her one day, couldn't get her on the phone, and got worried. And I don't know how my business partner in Indianapolis found out about, or Indiana found out about it, but he called me one morning and said, can't get, you've got a league member in trouble, and, and you need to know about it. And so we got on the phone. Then we got on the phone with us and the gal from Norway, and she told us what was going on. I said, well, let me see if I can get her. I tried to get her, and I couldn't get her on the phone. This was not like our gal in Zambia not to answer a phone call. So I thought, well, maybe her phone's been disconnected or something, you got worried. Maybe she's in the hospital, whatever. She says she really was not doing well. Mm-hmm. And so what happened is funny. I said, we got off the phone. I said, well, each of us try to think of somebody we know. We need boots on the ground. We need somebody in that country that can help her, right? Mm-hmm. And I couldn't think of anybody. I said, really? She's the only one in that country. I think I know. I got off the phone and realized that all morning long, the father of the youngest Daughters Global member I have, Namara's dad, who was actually on our call, on our Arts and Conversation event. He had been LinkedIning me all morning long with little cute stories about his daughter, about how when she was very young, 9 days old, she had to have open heart surgery, blah, blah, blah. So he's telling me all these stories about Namara and, how she was very persistent when she was in kindergarten, blah, blah, blah. He's literally, this went on from 5:30 in the morning when I got up having coffee until I got that phone call. And then I'm literally going down the hall and I'm going, oh my God, he's in Zambia. He lives and works in Zambia. And not only that, he's a pharmacist. And not only that, he's a patient advocate. I could not get to the computer fast enough. And I knew he was online because I'd been talking to him all morning long via LinkedIn messages. So I went to him, I said, I've got a big ask. I have a big ask. And he said, what is it? And I told him, and he said, give me your phone number. I'll call her now. I said, well, let me call her first to let her know that there's going to be a stranger calling her. Let me see if I can get her. I finally did get her. And I told her what was going on. And I said, expect a phone call right away. He called her. He not only called her and talked to her, he went to see her. He lived 20 minutes from her. He was literally 20 minutes away. Now, we're not talking about Zambia, a city. We're talking about Zambia, a country, And he lived or was about 20 minutes with her, away from her. He went to see her, and later that day sent pictures of the two of them together meeting, and basically took on her project of helping her to get her health back on track. As a pharmacist, he felt like she was on too many meds, that there were some that were redundant or not necessary. Mm-hmm. And he said she needs some blood work done. He arranged for that. And so we as a Frontrunners League, arranged to do whatever we could to kind of help her in that regard. But what happened there is we felt like we collectively, across how many continents now, about 3, helped to save a life that day. And we knew that if we could get her on track, just get her health back to where normal would have been, then she could move on from there. She could do that. And she has. This has been since last November, maybe. So to me, that's one of the best stories ever to come out of it. It has nothing to do with business or social enterprise. It has to do with when you're engaging in something like this and you're building a community. And it doesn't have to, I built this community kind of on purpose after so many months of doing interviews. It occurred to me to put a framework around it and have people meet and work with each other. And then I'd access them for all different kinds of things, mentoring project and all kinds of things. But it could be just your network. And if you've connected 2 people together or 3, and you have no idea what kind of impact could go there, when you do find out, it's very gratifying to know that I don't care what money I make in the rest of my life, that's the kind of impact I want to go to my grave with. Absolutely. That's the kind of thing that I want to feel really proud about and kind of share going forward. And I ask every day to be a blessing to somebody, and never fails, never fails that somebody doesn't show up that I feel like that's what's happened.
Yeah, that is an amazing story.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's where the whole community, literally from Norway to the United States to Zambia. I mean, it's serious. And the woman in Norway is not even Norwegian. She's Colombian.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's the power of connection.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you what kind of excites you about the future of Frontrunners Innovate and where you want business to go.
You know what? I'm old enough now where I have some generalized goals in my mind that I quit putting down on paper that I want XYZ to happen by XYZ. I used to be that kind of person. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you do that, sometimes you let go of being in the flow. You know what I mean? That sometimes it's better to recognize the flow, because when you get too oriented towards a particular goal, sometimes you don't see the other cool things that are happening. And if you take the time to kind of look and see what's happening, then you do a better job of being in the space where you're supposed to be, not where you think you should be. You should be based on all the external stuff. It's where you are making the most difference and where you should be in your own heart and your own mind. and your own soul. So where I don't have a plan for where I see it going at this point in time, except for more good. And what I do feel like there's very definitely a direction that's sitting on me right now. There's two directions. One of it is, it's really funny. I became partners with the Black Women Empowered Network. Okay. Jackie, bless her heart, and I talked, I think I even interviewed her for my platform. And it was at that point in time we realized there was something special going on here. She actually manages a very, very large, when I say large, like into the millions. Monique knows her. I introduced her to her. And she kind of calls me her sister, her white sister. And honestly, when I get on their team calls, I think I'm the only white woman there. And she allows me to send, not allows, demands that I send content to her that I'm doing that would tap into the faith-based, niche that she's got going on there. And so I do that. And we've talked about the fact that I don't see color. And that, you're a woman just like I am, or you're a human being just like I am. I don't see that way. And it actually started before that when I had, when I developed a partnership with Dr. Anamika out of Nigeria, who calls me his African sister. And we laugh about that. It's really funny. So it feels like in this time of racial tension that I've been put in a place to do something, or to level out the tension in some way by seeing that, we don't need to judge anybody by any kind of color on anybody's face, or what anything that they are. They're all human beings, that we're all, under the same roof here, if you will. We're all existing on the same planet. So I feel like there's something there going on. The other thing that I'm feeling here lately is I've been drawing a lot of diplomats from around the world. These are influencers in their own spaces and in their own countries. And I sense that that there's a reason for that, because these influencers, if they're not government officials, they have very deep relationships with those decision makers inside government. And if change or anything's going to happen, it's going to be through personal relationships with the people that have the power to make these decisions. And so I might not be able to get to the king of whatever country, but I can get to the man who's standing right next to the king and who has his ear every day. And so if I can do that and make friends with him, then there's no telling what kind of value I can be to that innovator who says, "Ooh, I've got this plan for blah, blah, blah that can fix this problem here in this country." Mm-hmm. Then I can go, "Oh, I know who exactly to connect with." And so those things are starting to populate. They're starting to happen. Those type of connections are starting to happen, whereby I might have somebody who builds medical universities in African places and has one already existing for 11 years in Gambia that didn't take a dime out of the government there and has given back scholarships to that government. Now, whether he got the property to build on it for free or what, I don't know. But taking his model and realizing there's another country out there that says, "Hey, we need some economic development in this area over here near this airport," I can say, wonder what a medical university would do for that. You get a university, you train the students, you get a clinic that'll come because there's students there now that can go to work somewhere. And then you get the healthcare going on, you got medical tourism maybe, and other technical, inventions that can come along and really help that whole area grow. So we start looking at things like that.
Yeah, it seems like
we'll do more of that. That's where we're going, I think, is, if I had to guess, we're going to do more of that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of your connections and kind of initiatives happen very naturally.
Mm-hmm. Some do. I am always on the lookout for the types that I think resonate with what the type of work we do. Mm-hmm. I interview for my media platform. It's for the most part, I think I'm them in some way, or them be part of a business be able to do. It's visibility for them, and that's great. But what I want is a functioning member to my network. Somebody not only I could do favors for, send them introductions for publicity, collaborations, business deals, or whatever. But also, if I need a resource for a project, I know I can tap them and they'll be right on board.
Right.
So, some people call it social capital building when you're doing those types of favors for people. And there's not enough to be said for that. because this planet is built on that. The whole human race is built on this kind of thing. And if we're going to get anywhere in the future, we got to get back to doing things where instead of somebody saying, okay, how much are you going to pay me, is, what can we do where this is mutually beneficial for everybody? How can we come out of this where it's not as much, it might be a business transaction that is just evident that's what it is, but how do we come out of this ahead of the game and make everybody happy? If it's not evident that where the money flow is going to happen, we don't need to look for it. If it's something we need to do, we just need to do it. If the piece is already there, it's in place, and it is, and it should be, then yeah, that's the way you go at it. But not every transaction is that way, nor should it be.
Yeah, definitely more of like a give and take.
Yeah, definitely.
So my final question for you is, what advice do you have for someone trying to expand their network or grow their initiative?
Ooh, diversity. First, you need to look at your network and see. Most people are very linear in their networks. It's all the same type of people, same occupation, maybe same industry. Okay. And they built that for the most part over a number of years. And especially if they go to a lot of conferences that is in the same, space, or they belong to a professional association where they're meeting all the same types of people. What you need to do is look at building your network the same way as you would look at building your board of directors. So I've built enough nonprofits in my life so that I know that I'm needing a legal eagle. I need a lawyer because you got to get your bylaws done, right? You're going to need a treasurer, a banker, somebody who's got a financial brain about them. You're always going to need somebody that can handle publicity, that can help you get it. And for the most part, you're going to need people around you that are influencers and connectors, because if you're going to need to raise money of any sort, you need those people who are highly visible and very good at influencing people, the fundraisers of the world. So I even think about the edge of your industry. For instance, like, what did I put down? Because I was making notes. Okay. So if you're a medical device company, a startup or whatever, and you're looking to build your network out, then probably what you'll want to do is not only look at the types of people you want to do business with proper, that are really evident and obvious right in front of you. You want to look to the edges to maybe the hospital distributors, the people who distribute supplies and things to the hospitals. And why? Because they have relationships with whole hospital chains, whole hospital groups, not just one hospital. They're likely to have it with a whole string. They have to in order to be able to survive as a hospital distributor. So, in our particular case, we've got one that fits not only the hospital distributor mode and has a long history of that. He's a minority. So for hospitals to do business with him as opposed to anybody else, he's got the actual government status as a minority. They get a little extra love from the government for doing business with a minority business owner. So, those sorts of things you can look at, but because, if one hospital wants to do business with him, the whole chain is going to do, the whole group is going to do it. So, that's what I'm saying. Look to the edge of your industry, to vendors, to service providers for that industry, because they're going to have your audience. They're going to have your market ready. So if you're a startup, you don't want to start necessarily and just, here's the first customer, here's the second one, here's the third one, or whatever. You want to have access to groups of people that are the types that you would want to do business with. So if somebody has your market or your audience, don't look at them as competition. Think about how you could collaborate with them. What do you have that they don't?
Yeah.
So we kind of look at all those things. So connectors, publicity types, fundraising types, legal types, media, any kind of media types that you might, look at down the road, podcasters that are popular, that sort of thing, and start filling out your network with these types to ready yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's all the questions that I have for you, but thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. I learned a lot, and I'm really grateful for you agreeing to meet with me.
Sure. No problem. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.